he's been slaving over this day for like actually a couple weeks in his thing, writing. Every time I call him, what are you doing? I'm practicing my routine. So let's get him up here, Mr. Cloyce Martin.
It's Dr. Cloyce Martin, by the way.
Yeah, it's Dr. Cloyce.
I didn't go to medical school for 6 years, just to, call him Mr. I'm totally kidding. Well, thank you for coming. The first thing I was thinking about that, I want to know how many of you guys are as excited as I am that we don't have to write with quills. I mean, the dipping and the scratching and the dipping and the scratching, and the blotting. And don't get Kimberly started on the whole conspiracy of there's a papyrus shortage. That's like kind of crazy. Come down here, you little crazy nut. Anyway, today I'm going to be doing what's I've called politically incorrect comedy. So hopefully I will offend one of you or somebody that you love with my routine. So anyway, that's what I think. Typically, with these kind of deals, the comedian sells DVDs in the back, to make extra money and whatever, right? I've never done one of these, so I don't have any DVDs. But I do have some CDs, so you guys can pick up some of my Fleetwood Mac, or I have some early Milli Vanilli. No, I'm just kidding, I don't have any CDs. But I do have some cassette tapes, so you can get the cassette tapes of Fleetwood Mac.
Any tracks?
Early Milli. I don't have any of those, unfortunately, but. And I have some T-shirts. My wife has been saving my T-shirts since I was born. She's a collector, so you can get some T-shirts and I can sign those for you. A lot of them I've outgrown, obviously, but anyway. So now, in order to finance this whole thing tonight, I have to do a commercial. So you guys can just sit here and watch if you want to, but I'm just going to do this thing. So I don't really have the ability to, cut away to like a video where we can watch it on the screen or whatever. But so just like, I'm going to just do a commercial now. So you just sit there and then we'll come back to the show. So anyway, hey, how are you guys? They asked me to say a few words about Folgers coffee. Folgers has been really important in my life because, a few years ago, I was having really a hard time staying awake at work, and my bosses, and especially the union, were really coming down on us because I'm a commercial pilot. So I had to do something. So anyway, I found Folgers, and now I can go out and party like all night long, and come in and have a couple of cups of Folgers, and I'm good for most of an international flight. So anyway, I think it's added a lot of safety, I think, to the whole airline industry. So that whole industry has probably been, saved by, Folgers, so that's been good. And then, the other thing that Folgers has done, I think, with the whole furniture industry, for instance, like, coffee tables, probably wouldn't have been invented if it hadn't been for coffee, right? I mean, why would you have needed it? And, one of the other things, when you're watching like a long television show or something, or like NFL or whatever, Dr. Matt and I watch a lot of football together, your feet are down and they start swelling, because you're not, you're sitting there for a long time. So if you couldn't elevate your feet, get up and go for walks, just to increase the circulation and that kind of stuff. And so I think that whole furniture industry has benefited a lot from Folgers, and we have to thank them for that. And then the other thing is the whole dessert industry. If you ever go into a party and like you forget to bring a dessert, or the host didn't make a dessert or whatever. You can always go into the kitchen and just whip up a quick dessert. And what I like to do is just take some crackers, like saltines or whatever, and put down, and you put some Cool Whip, or if you have time to do the real stuff, you can whip that up. And then just a little packet of Folgers on top of that. You got all right, back to politically incorrect comedy. That's the end of that commercial. Yesterday, today's going pretty well, but yesterday I had such a horrible day. I went to Costco, buying some food for this get together, and I was backing out and I ran over a guy that was walking with a white cane. He was in my blind spot. So I think that was horrible, and that's just, that whole politically correct thing of, hiring people that are disabled to let them do that kind of stuff, I think was ridiculous. He's out there gathering the baskets, with his little cane, and it's dangerous. I think that's stupid. So anyway, but that whole thing set up a really bad day for me. The events for me ruined the rest of my day, because that guy was, walking behind me. So I'm hopeful that that's going to be done away with. But later in the day, we got to go out to a dinner we went to some friend's house and they made this amazing dinner. And at some course, during the evening I had to go to the bathroom, so I went into the restroom, and I was amazed. I mean, there was this commode system there that was incredible. I walked up to it, and the lid opened up by itself, and it had a bidet setting, which is, it's like, washes your undercarriage. I mean, I know some of you people are great. So, but it had a dryer setting and a seat warmer. I mean, this thing was impressive, right? I thought it was a little too extravagant. I mean, when I'm here, I just use, Kimberly's water pick and a blow dryer. So it works for me. But I was talking earlier with some of you guys about things that happened in Australia, and one of the things that came to my mind was what we call in the industry unintended consequences. And I don't know when you guys were in Australia if you heard about this story, but Australia several years ago decided that they needed to get rid of the cane beetles that were eating their sugar cane up in Queensland, and they imported these. They weren't that big. They were huge toads from Africa. They call them cane toads. And it turns out that these destroyed the ecology of the entire area because these things were eating all the other animals. Any reptile that ate them, like if a venomous snake ate it, it died. And so they're destroying the entire ecosystem of the thing. So, it's one of the unintended consequences of that whole thing. And I think we're doing that right now with like plastic straw, banning. A lot of the restaurants have gotten rid of plastic straws now. And what's happened now is that we have one too many sea turtles. So, I mean, at some point we're going to have so many sea turtles that you won't be able to swim in the ocean. There's just going to be turtles everywhere. It's going to be a horrible situation. But anyway, I've been driving it. My young daughter, she's 15 and she can't drive yet, so I've been having to take her to school every day. And so we've been spending a lot of time in the car, for the last few months. And one of the things I've noticed that as soon as we get in the car, she wants to control the radio, right? And so she wants to listen to her music, and I want to listen to good music. So we're always fighting over that. She's punching the radio. So I mean, I told her, the guys who sing on her stations, they sound like they have an acute intestinal infection. They're going, it's midnight and I can't find the outhouse. Give me some Michael Bublé. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And and then we get stuck in traffic. Last Friday, traffic was horrible. It's always horrible in Southern California, right? And we all experience that. It's terrible here. But this last Friday, it was really bad. And my sister lives in Southern Illinois, and I sent her a text message just to show her how bad traffic was. And then she sent me back a text, said, "Oh, that looks like a bad picture." And I sent her back a text. I said it wasn't a picture, it was a video. It's supposed to be moving. So anyway, that's crazy. And then we get Maddie and I get to spend a lot of time talking about various things. And she wants to go to a really big, fancy college and get into medical school and do all this stuff. So that's kind of fun to get to talk to her about her dreams and that kind of stuff. But I was telling her that when you're going to get admitted to college, you have to really do something to sort of increase your competition level against all the other people out there. And so I was thinking about what it must be like for an admissions college admissions team to be sitting around and looking at this, because I think everybody that's going to big colleges, everybody's got a 4.0 grade point average now because of all the weighted classes and stuff. And so that doesn't really distinguish anybody. And the SAT scores, basically you can buy whatever you want to do with that, right? So that doesn't really help you. So it really comes down to your extracurricular activities. And over the course of the last few years, every time Madeline cleans a room, we give her a gold star. So she has 50 gold stars. And she's been, volunteering at NCL, which is National Charity League, and she's going to, homeless encampments and giving out food and, doing all of this stuff. So it's been, she's been doing a lot of volunteering and that kind of stuff. And so you can imagine the admissions officer, they're sitting there, and they're weighing two over there. They have Maddie on this side who's got 50 gold stars, and then you have a person over here who volunteered at a leprosy colony for 4 years in Molokai. You go, well, that's really good too. So it's like, and then, they're going, well, we don't really want to introduce leprosy into the dormitory, so I think Maddie gets the nod. So you're going to college, babe. So anyway, that's really good. I don't know if any of you guys know, I'm sort of an efficiency expert, and just to give you a couple examples, like I usually wear shorts because I don't want to take the extra time to put my foot all the way through my pant leg, and it saves a little bit of time. I don't use underwear either, so I can just pull those on really quickly, and I'm out the door. But I use Waze and Google Maps simultaneously, and sometimes just for 30 seconds I'll drive across the football field, and we can get there faster. So that just gives you an idea, the kind of extent that I would go to save some time. But because we've been driving back and forth so much, I've been driving across these railroad tracks, and I take her to school, and I come home, and I go and get her again, and I come home. So I have to drive across railroad tracks 4 times a day. And I was like, think about how much time I'm spending slowing down, listening for the train horn, looking both ways, and it just takes a lot of time. So I go, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to drive straight across the train tracks, and I'm going to look one way. I figure, the chances of getting hit by a train are pretty small, and if I can reduce that by half, I should be good to go. So that's kind of my idea of the thing. One of the things that we noticed the other day when we were driving is that there's a building up, and it said First Korean Baptist Church, and it caused me to remember in our old neighborhood, just north of here, there was a First Korean Baptist Church, and I go, one of them is lying. There can only be one. They must be the North Koreans. Yeah. But speaking of Asian people, I was coming out.
You sold a lot of people.
Just be careful.
Crowd.
I was stopped at a stoplight, and so there was an Asian guy that was coming out of a store driveway, and was wanting to obviously to merge in. So I motioned for him to come in front of me, and he held up one finger like this, and I looked at him. I go, I have no idea what you're saying because I don't speak Chinese.
Chinese.
I still don't know what he meant. I'm going to be traveling here in a couple weeks. I'm going back to Washington, D.C., and I was looking on the internet to see what kind of activities are going on there, to see if there's anything I don't want to miss. I mean, a lot of stuff happening in Washington right now, but one of the things I came across, they're going to be having a paralegal convention, and I thought, well, that's going to be kind of weird for me to be walking around the city and all these people in wheelchairs filing their legal briefs and memos. This is weird. Paralegal. Raj, you're gonna think about this morning, and you're gonna laugh. Paralegals, you still don't get it? No. Anyway, at one time in my career, I was actually really successful. I, became a doctor, and I lived in Newport Beach, and had a big house, and I noticed, when I was living there, a lot of beautiful people live in Newport Beach. It's really it's a gorgeous, area to live. But not everybody who lives there can afford, plastic surgery, or Botox injection or whatever. So I want to give back to the community a little bit. So I'm going to be setting up some free clinics for the homely. And you might want to come down and get some. Yeah.
On the house.
Yeah, it's free. That's going to be good. And it's my way to get back. We moved from that house up to a house that had a lot more land up in just north of here, and it gave us an opportunity to have some animals. And so we had 50 chickens at one time, and one dominant rooster. And this rooster was really incredible. I mean, this thing was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, if you had to design how a rooster should look, it had big tail feathers that were, just gorgeous, had this iridescent glow of many of his feathers, and these reds and browns and blacks. I mean, just a gorgeous animal. But he was very dominant. And I actually saw him, this is a true story, I saw him chase a coyote out of our yard. And he chased the coyote out. And another time, he went up and there was a red-tailed hawk, and these are big birds about this tall with a 5-foot wingspan, was sitting on the hillside looking down at our chickens. They were pecking and scratching around. And that rooster went over to that red-tailed hawk and got it to fly away. I go, that is a tough rooster, right? Gwendolyn, when she was much younger, comes in one day and she goes, Dad, that rooster tried to attack me. I go, no, a rooster didn't try to attack you. I poo-pooed that because I was raised on a farm and, didn't ever have a rooster ever try to attack me. So I really dismissed it. And she was like, no, he tried. Anyway, the very next day, it turns out, I was out in the driveway loading something in the back of the car. And this rooster comes over with his 1.5-inch fighting spur and impaled it in the top of my left foot all the way down to the bone. And I don't know if any of you have ever had an injury that went all the way to your bone, but it dropped me to my knees, made my eyes water, and I was stunned. I mean, it really hurt. And it took me a few minutes to gather myself up, but I, got back up, and the rooster was standing right there, and I went over and I tried to kick it with my lame foot, and he ran across the driveway and came to the grassy area of our yard, and he stopped and just kept watching. So I walked over to him, and there happened to be a piece of PVC pipe about this long and about 1 inch in diameter laying right next to him. I reached down and picked it up and I said, you are gonna die. And I came up, and as hard as I could swing it, I went right for his head. And that rooster went like this and just looked at me again. And that made me even more infuriated. So now I come back this way and I took a step forward, and I'm gonna take his head off, and I went whoosh, and he literally went. He didn't even move his feet, and I'm just, oh my God. So I went in and got my shotgun. No, I didn't. I'm just kidding. But I took that piece of PVC pipe and I laid it at that rooster's feet, and I tipped my hat and I gave him a grin because I knew that I'd been beat by a chicken. It was amazing. I mean, crazy. But I thought later, he was probably looking at me going, I was in a cockfight with an unarmed opponent. So I'm clearly not going to make it as a farmer. So I decided to do something. I want to start inventing games. So that's my new venture. So I thought of something that's going to be kind of like Monopoly. I'll call it politically incorrect Monopoly, I guess, if I can use that name. I'll have to think of something. But it's going to be kind of interesting. I'll have on one side of the board, you can come down and you can buy properties. There's going to be a Chicago and a Baltimore and a Detroit properties. And if anybody lands on your property, you'll have to roll the dice and then multiply by 100, because that's going to be what your hospital bill for getting shot to get fixed back up for landing on the property. And then if you go around the corner and you land on the corner spot, instead of going, it'll say, do not pass go directly to Guantanamo. You got to spend a few weeks there. And then if you come around the corner, there's the little chance cards. You guys remember those? You have to draw from the chance card. So one of the cards will be a thing where everybody at the table will have to pay you $10, and they're going to do the Burka Boogie. The Burka Boogie. Anyway, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for that. But anyway.
Didn't offend anybody tonight.
I'm not, I'm trying
Not
to
yet.
offend everybody, so, just hang in there. So, I don't know, a lot of you might not know, but I'm in a mixed marriage. My wife is schizophrenic and I'm not. So that's been a kind of thing. But I did get circumcised when I was a young baby, and so that always comes up, in conversation with my Jewish mother-in-law, how that all went. And I, always feel a little weird talking about your penis to your family. Kimberly said it's not a big deal, but of course I just. But she's, ever since that time, she doesn't even like being followed on Instagram. So that thing has become a whole problem with her. But now her new thing is that you know, every time a jet flies over, you know, they're leaving the white clouds in the back, and we all call them contrails, right? But she calls them chemtrails, and I spell that K-I-M, trails. But she thinks that they're laying down chemicals that help to reflect infrared rays back, you know, into the sky, so it doesn't heat up the earth, or for you know, population control or whatever. But that's not the crazy part. So the crazy part is that now she thinks that they're laying them down in hyphens, because when the wind blows, that disperses them to look more like clouds, right? Instead of just that straight line, because that's obviously too obvious, you know, with the thing. Apparently, our brains aren't designed to recognize hyphens, you know, as much as straight lines. So she's got that going. She is a good shopper, though. I think you know, she's been practicing a lot this last several years, so she's got that down to a fine science. And we were at the Orange County Fair a few years ago, and we got separated somehow. I was off looking at fine art, and she somehow went on to that, you know, row where they sell the awnings and the spas and the beds. And the way I envision this is she must have, you know, met up with a really young, good-looking salesman who 2 weeks earlier had reached the pinnacle of his sales, you know, career selling corn dogs, and then he moved over to the slumber industry, and then, you know, she met up with him, and so she wound up buying, you know, a sleep system. Really, it's a, you know, very complicated thing, and these beds were amazing. I mean, 2 twin beds that go side by side, and it had wireless remotes, which we've lost, by the way. But when we had them, they were incredible. We had, you know, you could touch the button and you could raise your feet up, you could raise the head of your bed up. It had a cruise ship setting, which was my favorite. It actually would cause the bed to list back and forth like a cruise ship, which was good, because once you buy this sleep system, you can't afford to go on an actual cruise, because, you know, it was $5,000 down and then $100 a month for the rest of my life. So anyway, that was kind of crazy, and the whole system was, you know, based on numbers. I mean, her number was 25 and mine's -2. So what that means is that, you know, she can put 25 pillows on her side of the bed, and I don't get any pillows. I mean, actually, if I get a pillow, she pulls it over and incorporates it into her thing. And she's doing some amazing things with this. I mean, she builds armrests and footrests and tunnels, and, you know, there's a couple caves at the bottom. I mean, sometimes our dog goes underneath, and we don't see him for 2 days. So anyway, she did do something nice for me a couple years ago. She made me a duck down pillow, and that was really nice. I slept on it for about a year, and I mean, to tell you the truth, it wasn't that comfortable. I think she should have killed the duck first. You know, it's always a little, you know, bumpy. It's kind of crazy. I had a revelation the other night. I was in this nice, comfortable bed, and something happened to me that made me decide that there is a God. And what happened is I'm laying there perfectly asleep. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. I get this itch right in the middle of my back, and it's like so intense. It wakes me up, and I can't reach it, you know. So I go, you know, this is a sign that God is getting bored. I mean, he's been watching us now for, you know, a long time, and he's at least 5 billion years old, you know, and so he's been, you know, watching Earth and, you know, the development, all this stuff, and it's getting boring. I mean, occasionally he'll throw down a flood or a plague, you know, which is more exciting. But on a day-to-day basis, it's really quite boring, right? Watching our, you know, human activity. So he's decided to start messing with us. And so what I'm envisioning is he's got this great big lounge chair with this cool iPad. It's like I don't know, the Tesla X, you know, it's got the cool backlights and high definition. And over on the right-hand side, there's, you know, infinite number of icons because he's God. So he can scroll through and he could just, you know, he can pick up his subject, and he'd pull up there. And he goes through the icons and he can see, you know, so he was scrolling through, and, you know, he's got me up on the screen. And he sees this little puppy with long ears and long hair, and it's scratching as hard as it can, trying to reach this itch it never is able to get, right? And he goes, oh. So he touches that with the stylus, He comes over right in the middle of my back and he touches my back, and I got this itch. It's like gesticulating, trying to get this thing, and I can't reach it in any way that I possibly can go. And I would have asked Kimberly to scratch it, but I couldn't find her for the pillows. I didn't want to get lost in that whole tunnel system. So I'm sitting there and I'm trying to, and then God bores with that really quickly, and he goes, "Oh, what else have we got?" And he's scrolling down and he goes, "Oh, he played volleyball twice this week." And he goes, "Oh, there's a dentist that's drilling on a guy with no Novocaine." Touches that, comes over and touches me right there on my shoulder. So now it hurts when I go like that. I'm trying to itch. And then, ow. It's like, ah. So that was my epiphany. I go, there's got to be a God, because he's messing with us. And the other thing you have to be really careful with about God is that when you're praying, you got to be super careful. I experienced this myself just a short while ago, and I think what's happening is that God is sort of an ESL kind of guy. I mean, his English is a second language. I think he speaks mostly Aramaic and maybe a little bit of Hebrew. But so, English is not really it. And he's got a lot of things going on. He's listening to 8 billion people, and so he's a little distracted. And so I was praying, and I asked him to get rid of all my enemies. And he thought I said anemones. And so several reef systems throughout the world have been severely impacted, and that's been really sad because I've been enemies. So coming down to Earth, Elon Musk, you guys all know who Elon Musk is, right? He's got the SpaceX program. Amazing guy. He's just doing all these incredible things. A couple of years ago, well, it wasn't even that many, it was a few months ago, he put 2 landing pads down, and whenever he sent something into space, it's probably a satellite, he had these great big rocket boosters that came down to Earth and landed on pads simultaneously. I mean, I can't get that kind of synchronization out of my windshield wipers. I mean, that's pretty amazing, right? You got these great big rockets that are landing. I'm like, wow, that's incredible. And you compare that to like what NASA did. They sent guys to the moon, and on their way back, their goal was to hit Earth. That's the difference between government-run stuff and private corporations. Anyway, Earth is mostly water, so everybody was safe, and that worked out. But the other thing I went to the other day, I was thinking of Maddie. I was driving home, and I thought, I'll run by McDonald's and I'll pick her up some fries. And I'm kind of hungry. I'm going to get a fish sandwich while I'm in there.
I've never done that for me.
I know this is one of those special occasions. But anyway, so I stopped at McDonald's, and I go inside, and I was met by one of their employees. And this young kid says, "Hey, sir, can I come show you how to order on the kiosk?" And I said, "Sure." So I walked over to this kiosk, and I don't know if you guys have been into a McDonald's recently, but they have these kiosks that are this big, and they're great, just I got all the icons of everything. And he showed me how to order a fish sandwich, and then he had to leave immediately to go on his mandatory, California 15-minute break. So he walks away, leaves me there to order now the fries by myself. And I'm trying to scroll through and find, and it turns out that every combination of everything on there with fries is available. So there's apple pie with fries, there's Coke with fries, there's a fish sandwich with fries, but I already ordered the fish sandwich, so I didn't need to do that. So I was just looking through, trying to find the fries, and then you can't find it. So I got frustrated. I go, cancel. And it said, "You want fries with that?" Yes! And the next thing that came up, it said, "To finish your order, please see the attendant to pay." And I go, "You've got to be kidding me. There was no way to pay at this kiosk." So now, you know how patient I am. I look over. There's this long line at a single cashier that's taking money in this long line. I go, oh my God. I go and get in the line, and I'm behind this cute little family. Had a little kid there, and and of course they wait until they get all the way up to the cashier before they start having this conversation, which was, well, should we order 10 nuggets or the 6-pack? He doesn't want to eat, probably 10, but maybe he'll eat more than 6. And so they're back and forth. The whole time I'm sitting there realizing they haven't even started cooking my fish sandwich because I haven't paid for it. So this whole time I'm waiting, and it's like, oh my God. Anyway, they got some glitches to work out with that. My buddy over here, Raj, and I have been watching a lot of sports lately, and it started really with me during the last World Series. You know, the Astros and the Nationals, you guys all see that? Fantastic series. These guys were all amazing. But what really amazed me about that whole thing was whenever I'm watching them, they instantaneously bring up statistics that, you know, give the announcers something to talk, you know, about on the thing. And, you know, Altuve hit a double, and by the time he reached second base, they had put up a graphic that said, has hit more extra base innings than any second baseman in postseason playoff. I go, that is incredible. I mean, that they had that, you know, I don't know, it's like, I don't know if it's ready to go and they punch a button, but that's amazing. Somebody could do that. And if you're watching football, NFL, you know, somebody completes a pass within, you know, 2 seconds, they go, he's completed 39% of his passes, this primary receiver. The other quarterback's completed 62%, you know, his primary receiver. And so these guys can banter back and forth with all that stuff. Well, during halftime show of the very first NFL game, imagine this, they didn't have all those things, they didn't have any statistics, they didn't have the computers to come up with this. So these guys had to come up with generic stuff, right? So they're sitting there going, well, this is the first time, Brad, that any quarterback's ever thrown for this many yards in a first half of a game. And they go, yeah, that's amazing, Jim. And this is the first time that a running back's ever scored a touchdown in the first half. Yeah. And, you know, they're bantering back with generic things. And it's time for the halftime entertainment. You know, they didn't have a big draw then, so they really had to, you know, they couldn't get Beyonce or Jay-Z or anybody, you know, because, you know, there weren't that many people watching. So they had to go, they actually went out to Riverside, to the Riverside School for the Deaf, and got their marching band, and they brought those guys out. So they played, of course, their favorite song, which is Silent Night. And then, you know, so, you know, you can imagine these guys are out on the field and they're bumping into each other, and, you know, one of the kids looks over and goes, "Are we playing yet?" Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed that. I had fun doing it. Enjoy the rest of the night. Now it's my son Max's turn to